So we are going to read about catecholamine. What is catecholamine? The three different types of catecholamines we are going to study is dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine. Now, where are they synthesized and how they are synthesized? We are going to talk about them starting with their substrates. So they are synthesized. Their basic substrate is tyrosine, amino acid tyrosine. So the basic substrate is tyrosine. Where is this tyrosine coming from? From the extracellular fluid or from the resources, your nutrients. It is coming to the blood, and from the blood it is getting inside. This is a nerve terminal we are talking about. So amines are also synthesized. We all know they're going to be like amino acids and amines. They are synthesized at the nerve terminal. Now, where is this synthesized from? So let us start the cycle of synthesis. The first thing is tyrosine. Its substrate, the basic unit is tyrosine. Tyrosine is an essential amino acids. So what is tyrosine going to do? Tyrosine, under the influence of the enzyme called as tyrosine hydroxylase, is going to form a compound called as L-DOPA. It's called as L-DOPA, and the full form is dihydroxyphenylalanine. So L-DOPA. Now this L-DOPA, in the presence of a decarboxylase enzyme, which is called as aromatic L-amino acid decarboxylase enzyme, is going to get converted into dopamine. So we know dopamine is the neurotransmitter for us. And what are we going to do? So there is vesicular monoamine transporters present here. We have discussed in our last class. So it acts as an antiporter where hydrogen will be going out and the neurotransmitter will be getting in. So dopamine gets in, and dopamine may remain as itself. It may remain as a dopamine itself into those synaptic vesicles. Or if there is a presence of this enzyme called as dopamine beta hydroxylase, this is going to get converted into norepinephrine. And then this will remain in the synaptic vesicle. So you have to take into account about two things here. One, we may have, if it is a dopaminergic type of neuron, I may have dopamine coming into the synaptic vesicle and dopamine staying here stored in the synaptic vesicle. If this is a noradrenergic or adrenergic neurons, so what am I going to do? This dopamine is going, so the pathway will be similar for norepinephrine also. It is going to be similar how it is coming here. So norepinephrine, it will be formed and it will be nicely stored in the synaptic vesicle. And once the neurotransmitter comes in, like your action potential comes in, there is opening of voltage gated calcium ions, and this voltage gated calcium ions is going to cause the release of norepinephrine. Now this norepinephrine, which is released in the synaptic cleft, will act through its receptors which are present in the postsynaptic end. What is being seen here is that these adrenergic receptors also have autoreceptors. Autoreceptors means the receptors who are going to respond to their own transmitter. And these autoreceptors are located where? At the presynaptic end. So probably the neurotransmitters with this norepinephrine, when it comes down here, it will have three ways to go. What are that? One, to go and bind to its receptor. Other, to go back to, as a recycle process, as a symport along with sodium, it goes there. And then, it is going to a monoamine oxidase is there, and it may get converted to dopamine, or it may just remain into the synaptic cleft, not the cleft, in the synaptic vesicles and remain there. The other is that it may go and bind to its own receptor and may bring out some changes at the presynaptic end. Okay. The things that you have to remember in the whole cycle of it is this enzyme. Tyrosine hydroxylase is a rate limiting enzyme. So this is a step where you may accelerate this process or you may not accelerate this process. You can fasten it or you can slow this process. So whom it is dependent on? Onto the activity of tyrosine hydroxylase. So this enzyme is it's termed as, it is a rate limiting enzyme. Now, where are these reactions occurring? The reactions occur both in cytoplasm and the enzymes containing the vesicles of the neuronal cells. So this enzymatic activity of dopamine getting converted to norepinephrine may occur at the cytosol also. If this enzyme dopamine beta hydroxylase is present, then we may have a conversion of dopamine into norepinephrine in the cytoplasm, or since this is present inside the vesicle, we may have the conversion inside the vesicles. So what is dopamine? Now we have talked about, see here we have seen actually about dopamine as well as norepinephrine. Since we are going to go dopamine first, we should first talk about dopamine and then we go to norepinephrine and epinephrine. So what are their physiological functions? We'll go. Dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of happiness, of joy. So where are they released? Where are they produced? They are produced in 3 different areas of your brain. So what are those 3 different areas? One is called as VTA. VTA is ventral tegmental area. Okay. So ventral tegmental, where is this tegmentum present? Is here. Okay. If this is the brain stem, this is my midbrain area. In the midbrain area, we have the colliculi nucleus, and around the colliculus nucleus is where I have the tegmentum. So if I say it is present in the ventral tegmental area, we are talking about this area. Then where is it present? In the substantia nigra. Where is this substantia nigra? Let me just take you. Substantia nigra, pars compacta, substantia nigra, and hypothalamus, in the nuclei of the hypothalamus. Let me just give you an orientation where at the location of this. What we are trying to tell is, I'm just trying to give you an orientation as where is this crus cerebri, where is substantia nigra, and where is this tegmentum. So let me just draw for you a section of brain. This is the cortex we take. Then here is where the midbrain starts. Okay. So midbrain will start and it will have the ventricles here. Then down to the midbrain is the pons, and down to the pons is the medulla. And here down to the medulla starts my spinal cord. Forgive me for my rough drawing. So when I say this is the midbrain, okay, here is where the midbrain structure is. This is the cerebral cortex. In the midbrain, this part is called as cerebellar peduncle, cerebral peduncle, okay, or crus cerebri. This is called as crus cerebri, okay. Now, near to the crus cerebri, there is a structure like this, okay. There is a structure like this. The front part is compact. We call it as substantia nigra pars compacta. This part, which is very compact and thick, we call it as substantia nigra pars compacta. Where are we? We are still in the midbrain. Okay. And here is the thalamus. Okay. And down to the thalamus is my hypothalamus. So you can imagine if this is the thalamus, okay, hypothalamus is below to it, and here is the pituitary gland. So here, this part we call it as hypothalamus. And hypothalamus has many nuclei, which is going to control your feeding center, thirst center, satiety center, sleep-wake cycle, biological clock, and then, you know, hormone releasing, trophic hormone release, everybody is here. And these glands, you know, we call it as anterior and posterior pituitary glands. They are responsible for all kinds of hormones like thyroid stimulating hormones, or maybe ACTH, and then FSH, LH, all those hormones which we talk about, they're coming from here. Now, so what am I talking about here is substantia nigra, why it is so important and why there is a dopamine thing here. Now, next to the thalamus, there is a structure called, so you have to imagine as if there is a cheese here. So imagine as if we are making a sandwich, okay? This you imagine as the egg or the potato. This as a cheese. In between these two cheese, you know, in between these cheese, just imagine as if there is a rat sitting here. I'm trying to be a little more, but it's just for your information. This rat is called as caudate nucleus. Just listen to me. You don't worry that I don't know or what, nothing like that. What I'm trying to tell is to make a correlation as why dopamine is important for us. This is called as, no, this cheese-like structure which we call, this is called as putamen. Okay. And this is called as globus pallidus. And this is your thalamus. So putamen, globus pallidus, caudate nucleus, substantia nigra, they all form a structure, you know, group of nuclei whom we call as basal ganglia. Have you heard of this name before?
Yes, ma'am.
Basal ganglia is very important for the initiation of a movement, for continuation of a movement, for the, you know, what you can say, motivation, many other factors, coordination of movement. So a lot of function of basal ganglia is there. Now, this substantia nigra, when we call it, we have a part which is compact, we call it as substantia nigra pars compacta. And we have another end which is called as substantia nigra pars reticulata. It is called as pars reticulata because it is little free reticulum-like structure, loose structures. This whole thing is forming a part of my basal ganglia. What is the thing is that this is having a connection with the globus pallidus or this basal ganglia's other nuclei, and it also has a connection with the thalamus. Okay, so it forms 2-3 connections, interconnections here. Here, this substantia pars compacta, the fibers which are going to here, they are actually going to act through 2 types of receptor. One is called as D2 receptor and another is called as D1. And who receptors are these? These are dopaminergic receptors or dopamine receptors. Okay. What is the function of these substantia nigra? This nigrostrial fibers, this fiber is called as nigrostrial because we call this structure together as striatum. So since it is going from the substantia pars compacta to the striatum, we call it as nigrostrial fibers. In Parkinson's disease, there is a damage to this pathway. So once there is a damage of this pathway, dopamine is no longer able to get, there is no release of dopamine. There is no action of dopamine onto this other connections which are there with these D2 and D1. So people who are Parkinsonism, who are suffering from Parkinsonism, they have difficulty in coordination of their movements. They have slurred speech. Their gait is changed. They walk as if they're trying to catch something. They walk very swiftly, very narrow gaits, narrow steps they take. Plus, they even have a loss of memory. They have masked faces. They're not able to express themselves. And what is seen is that most of the time, as age advances, Parkinsonism is slowly becoming a medical hazard for the whole population. Now, why did I tell you is this? This is what is called as, did you understand about substantia nigra? Did you all understand about substantia nigra? Where is it present? It is present in the midbrain. Dopamine is released from substantia nigra pars compacta. I hope now I'm making clear where is this substantia nigra?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So since I have given you an orientation, all my thing about to draw was not make you to understand every part of it or neither get you scared about the anatomy, but all I wanted to tell you is to locate where this substantia nigra is. So substantia nigra, nigrostrial fiber. Now I hope now it makes a sense to you. Whom do we call as nigrostrial pathway? So from the substantia nigra to the striatum. And where is the striatum present? It is a part of basal ganglia because basal ganglia is made up of 5 nuclei. What are those 5 nuclei? Putamen, caudate nuclei, globus pallidus, substantia nigra, and subthalamic nuclei. So the 5 nuclei of basal ganglia. Okay, basal ganglia is actually not a ganglia, but a collection of 5 cerebral nuclei, which are present deep into the cerebral cortex. So the fibers which are coming from the substantia nigra pars compacta to the striatum is now called as nigrostriatal pathway. This is dopaminergic in nature because it is going to release dopamine. Okay. Then comes your ventral tegmental area. Tegmentum is the superior colliculus midbrain area. From there, the fibers are going to the cortex. And we call this as mesocortical dopamine pathway. From the tegmentum to the cortex, we are calling it as mesocortical, since it is going to the cortex and it is dopaminergic in nature, we call it as mesocortical dopamine pathway. Okay, this is 2 main part of it. Then there is another one which is called as mesolimbic. It goes to the limbic system, of the brain. If there is fibers going from the tegmentum to the limbic system, we call it as mesolimbic dopamine pathway. Hypothalamus also has some amount of neurons which are going to release dopamine, and they are going to come out as tuberoinfundibular dopamine pathway. So these are the major pathways that you have to know for dopamine. First is nigrostrial pathway, which is going from substantia nigra to the basal ganglia. To be very specific, which part of basal ganglia? The lentiform nucleus of the basal ganglia. Again, to be more specific, it's the striatum of the basal ganglia. So it forms a nigrostrial pathway. Then the other one is from the tegmentum to the brain, to the cortex. Here we call it as mesocortical dopamine pathway. Then comes this from the tegmentum to the limbic system. So we have mesolimbic dopamine pathway. So, and the other one is the one which is coming from the hypothalamus. We call it as tuberoinfundibular dopamine pathway. So looking at this, what do you kind of come to a conclusion? What must be dopamine responsible for? Dopamine must be responsible for some coordination of movement, must have been responsible for certain aspects of your behavior, your expression of your face with that behavior, isn't it? Maybe something to do with your sleep wake cycle if it is through hypothalamus. Now, another thing, as I have told you, dopamine receptors. So, dopamine is going to act through its receptors. There are 5 sets of receptors: D1, D2, D3, D4, D5. In Nigro's trial pathway, it is D1 and D2 it acts through. So through D2, if it is excitatory, it is inhibitory through D1. So that is how it is going to depend on which receptor is going to come and act on. So dopamine, which was stored in the vesicle, once it is released, it goes and binds to its receptors present as the postsynaptic area. Okay, so D2 receptor acts as a negative feedback mechanism regulating the release of dopamine from presynaptic neuron. So what we see here is that we have autoreceptors also present. So we have presynaptic D2 receptors here. We have dopamine transporters here. So what will be the fate of dopamine once it comes here? It will be having 3 routes to do. One, go and bind to its receptor. Other, go and binds to its transporter, which is present at the presynaptic end, go back, get packed, and stay there happily. The other is, it is going to go and act to its own D2 receptors, which is present at the presynaptic end. And this is going to have a negative feedback mechanism. Now, how many of you know what is this negative feedback mechanism? How will you explain this negative feedback mechanism?
If the release of dopamine inhibits its own release.
Yes. So something which is going to inhibit its own function, its own release, is what we call as negative feedback mechanism. Something which is going to increase the release is what we call as positive feedback mechanism. Okay. Now let us go to what is the metabolism going to happen when dopamine is there. Dopamine is going to get broken down by an enzyme called as MAO-A or MAO-B. MAO stands for monoamine oxidase. Monoamine oxidase A and monoamine oxidase B. And catechol O-methyl transferase, COMT. Okay, here is the COMT. So what is happening? Your dopamine which comes here may go to the vesicle through vesicular monoamine transporter, remain there. Or there may be a fate of it to get metabolized, to become a dopamine metabolite. How does it go? It will either go to monoamine oxidase A or maybe monoamine oxidase B, and it gets, or maybe in catechol O-methyl transferase, and then what we will get is the metabolite, dopamine metabolite. This is how it is a breakdown of dopamine occurring. Coming to the involvement of dopamine, how is dopamine going to do? What is it going to do? Let us see here. It is involved in our central nervous system as it is important for, through the Nigro's trial movement. I told you, the Nigro's trial movement, Nigro's trial dopaminergic pathway is going to be involved in initiation and coordination of movement. So movement is how it is related. Then we have its association with the limbic system. So it is going to have some changes, in our behavior and cognition. It is related with hypothalamus. So there will be something called with sleep and mood. Okay. Then it is having a connection with the pituitary gland. So it may act as an inhibition to prolactin. It is going to be involved in attention as we have that pathway going to the cortex. Okay. So looking at the pathway, if you remember the pathway, you'll remember how this dopamine is going to be involved in the central nervous system. So it is going to be involved for learning and memory, for movement, for pleasurable reward. So it's a neurotransmitter of happiness, pleasure. So pleasurable reward, behavior and cognition, attention, sleep, mood. What are the other functions? Dopamine with its receptors, if it is acting on D2 receptors, may act as a vasodilator Vasodilator means it is going to decrease, increase the, what you can say, the vessel diameter by relaxing it, by relaxing those receptors there. So the vessel diameter will get increased and more of blood flow will be there through that. So that is what is called as vasodilator. It may increase the sodium ion excretion from the kidney, may cause the reduction of insulin production, or may decrease the GI motility. What will be the symptoms if there is excess of dopamine, and what are the symptoms that will happen if there is insufficiency of dopamine? So how do we do that? If there is excess of dopamine, there may be unnecessary movement, there may be psychosis, symptoms of schizophrenia, hypersexuality, or nausea. If there is insufficiency, the most important one is Parkinson's disease. So there will be loss of nigrostrial pathway. There is no dopamine. So the such people are usually treated with L-Dopa. They're given the commercial dopamine or L-Dopa constant, where that gets converted into dopamine. So we may give a dopamine antagonist for such people. Loss of motivation. Then we may have pain, ADHD, fatigue, apathy, and sleep disorder and memory loss. Now, most of the antipsychotic drugs which are given are usually dopamine antagonists. So they are going to be agonists and antagonists, where for Parkinson's disease, we have to give L-Dopa, which will be agonist of dopamine. For antipsychotic drugs like we are getting here, the psychosis, it's due to excess of dopamine. So you have to give antagonist. Antagonist means the one which is going to have an opposite action of dopamine, who is not going to have the same as the activity of dopamine. Some anti-nausea agents are also dopamine antagonist, as nausea is one which is caused due to dopamine excess.